Hello, hello, and welcome. You're listening to Light Sprinkles, and I'm Spring Ulrich, and I'm here to offer you inspiration, healing tips and tools, and to shed light and sprinkle light upon your path and on your journey. And today's topic is all about release and rest. So I have 6 areas that I want to talk to you about on being able to release. And this is definitely going into and diving into a loss, a grief, a really deep grief that you may experience in your life, and what stages you go through, especially if you've experienced the loss of someone that you love, and especially if it's someone who was really close to you. And the first item I'd like to talk to you about is the release of the body. That is really a very difficult and trying time. It's messy, it's challenging it's the shock time. It's hard to even believe that it's happened. It can be traumatic. And truly, when something like that happens, when you have a death of a loved one, it's really common and absolutely part of the process to go into shock, because it is so shocking to see someone's body and to have to let that go and to not be seeing it function in the way that it has. And that can be such a shocking experience to go through. And saying goodbye to the body is always a difficult task. Even if there are gifts in being present in a peaceful death, which is what I received with my late husband. I was able to go through his death experience, and I was able to be there for his last breath and request that of him, that he wait for me and that he experience that, to take his last breath with me being able to be present and witness that and be able to share with him to his last breath. And that was truly a gift, and it was a very sacred and spiritual experience for me, and I'm truly grateful that I had that experience. And it doesn't make it that it wasn't difficult. It doesn't mean that it wasn't one of the most difficult and challenging and hardest times in my life to say goodbye to the person that I loved so deeply and with every fiber of my being. That to see him wither away in front of me, and to see him take his last breath, and for him to no longer take the next breath, and go through the entire process of being with his body and having it no longer be working, and to the point where I had to then go through the process of releasing his body. And he was generous enough to donate his body to Science Care, and so they actually came to his the place where he was at his family's, and they came to pick him up. And this was at least a couple hours after his passing, and they came, and I got to experience them coming in and carrying his body out and putting it onto a stretcher and covering it with a blanket and kissing his forehead for the last time. And I decided that I needed a lock of his hair and cut a piece of his hair off, cut a little locket of hair to be able to keep. And it was really, truly difficult to allow them to roll him away and to take his body away and to let my baby's daddy go. Even though I knew he was no longer in his body, because he wasn't breathing anymore and it wasn't working, and he was no longer alive in his body, it was so hard to let that body go. That body that I had loved so deeply for so long. That body that I had loved every inch of. and rubbed his feet and loved his feet. And before they took him, and after he took his last breath, I cried on his chest for probably an hour. And I just loved on him. And I remember just touching his hands and touching his feet and holding his feet. And I remember his body was still warm. And when they actually came in to take him and they started to wrap him up and to take him off the bed, I couldn't watch that part. It just was too difficult, so I had to leave the room for a minute. And then they brought him out. But when this gentleman brought him out, he was carrying him like a fireman would have carried a child in his arms, and he just carried him so beautifully and so gently, and he laid him across the stretcher, and then he covered him with this beautiful blanket, and he just laid him there for me and let me take the time that I needed to kiss him and to say goodbye to his body. And that was so hard, because I knew that I would never see him again. It would be the last time that I would ever kiss his forehead or kiss his lips or to touch his feet or to touch his hair. So I gave him his last haircut, and I took a lock of his hair because I had nothing else but the memories and a bit of his hair. That was it. That was all I had left. And I share this with you because I truly know how difficult it is to say goodbye to the body. That is, even to this day, so difficult. And it was beautiful. There were such beautiful moments in that. And it was still very, very difficult. One of the hardest things to ever do. And yet, I did it. I made it. I've survived that. The release of his body. The release of my husband's body. My best friend. My biggest fan. My partner in life. I had to say goodbye to his body, and that was truly difficult. One of the biggest releases and letting go moments of my life. And it's especially difficult because I didn't want to. I didn't want to let him go. I never did. And chances are you probably experienced something similar on having to release something that you never wanted to release or let go in the first place. And that, I feel like, is the very most difficult thing to do, to say goodbye to someone or something that you feel like you didn't have a choice in, that wasn't part of your plan, and that can't be fixed or can't be undone, especially in the event of a death. It can't be fixed, it can't be undone, and there is no other option other than to release and to really let go. Now, of course, there are different levels, and there's cycles of grief. And so, of course, in shock, there can be the denial phases where you are denying it. There's the bargaining phases where you try to bargain your way out of the situation or a reason. It can be such a messy, messy time when you're going through grief and the loss of someone that you love. Or something that you've loved. And especially with a person, that is such a deep, tumultuous time. It's so turbulent. Imagine a cliff, a canyon. Imagine a canyon, and on one side of that canyon, it just drops off. And that dropping off point, and then there's a U, the deep valley of the canyon. And then on the other side, if you're at the beginning stages of when the body stops working or your loss happens, that tipping point when you have experienced your loss and you get to experience the release of that that person or that experience that you really loved that you have to release and let go of, that's the tipping point where the shock sets in. You're in the free fall and you're in shock and you go down. You're going down, down, down into this valley that is the aimless wandering valley where there's fear and anger and anxiety and bargaining and all kinds of emotions all mixed in, all happening and happening at different times, in and out, up and down. It's all over the place. It's a chaotic experience down there in the valley. And there's ups and there's downs, and eventually you find more and more times when the pendulum of this chaotic experience that you've dove off of the cliff and you've gone down into this valley, into the aimless wandering, that you then can come in and out from anger to bargaining to some acceptance and in and out and weaving back and forth in and out into different experiences, different triggers, and eventually get onto that other side of the canyon into the real healing zone where you feel like you're going to be okay again, or where you feel like that you can start imagining your new life and how that's going to look, or be able to dream again, or feel a little bit more even in your emotions, even in your day-to-day, and feeling a little more human, a little less in this chaotic, crazy world of grief land and aimless wandering, and back up into some feeling of perhaps there could be a new potential, a new purpose, a bringing about of your life in a way that you're building and creating that healing and coming into that acceptance, and that once you've gone through some acknowledgement, going up into the acceptance phase. So that brings me to the second item that I want to talk to you about, and that's the release of the old life. And I get it, especially if you've had an amazing, wonderful, beautiful life and a life that you love, and then you've had to say goodbye to that life or to that love or to that person or that job that you really loved, and there's no getting it back. Whatever that loss that you have experienced, there's that release when you can really release and let go of that old life and the old way that things were, because there's no fixing it. There's no making it the way that it was. And especially with death, because it's so final. There's no bringing the person back. There's no replacing them. There's nothing you can do to bring that old life back and have it to be the way it was. It's never going to be the same. And you don't just carry on. It's a building of a new life. It's a building of your next chapter. And it feels like such an abrupt slap and clap of the book, just completely like a bombshell to your life, and it's saying goodbye and releasing of that old life. And how do you do that? How do you release a life that you love? How do you release the person and the experiences and who you were when you were with that person, or who you were when you had that life that you loved with that person being in your life? And how do you let that go? That's not an easy task, and I get that. And it is a challenge, and it's a rocky road and roller coaster. And what I know is that you're capable and that you're able, and the only way through is to continue moving forward, one emotion, one bit at a time, and to travel and traverse that valley, that aimless wandering. And even though it feels like it's going nowhere, and that you're feeling completely lost and completely down in this ditch and looking up to anything to assist you in getting out, and there's no roadmap, and you're not sure what the way is, that it has a purpose, that it's going through all of the mess, all of the experiences, and feeling the feelings that come up and allowing yourself to really release the sadness and the feelings that come up of having to let go of the body, let go of the old life, and the disappointment, this devastation, the anger, the upset, all of the cycles of grief that come up, because you have to let that go. Now, you don't have to let go of the memories, and you don't have to let go of the love, because the love remains. That's what remains, is the love and the memories. Those are the sweetest, and they always remain, and no one can take that from you, not even death. Not even death. No one can take that from you. So take refuge in those stories of your old life, and don't let that part go, but just the part that it's able to be fixed, or that it's going to look the same. It's not going to look the same. Of course it's not going to look the same. As much as we want it to be, and as much as we don't want to let go of that, being able to get to the place and the acknowledgement of having to let that go, and that this new life experience that you're in is just that. It's all new. Everything will be completely new. For me, it was the life before my late husband passed and my life after. It's almost like a completely different book. Even though I am still myself, I'm not the same person. I'm not the same person I was when I was with him, and before his diagnosis and before his death. I have grown. I have grieved. I have gone through this incredible journey. I'm not the same person, and I don't have the same life that I did. So it's absolutely a new life from what it was. And to be able to acknowledge it's okay to grieve the loss of all that you lose in a death experience, and in grieving a major, major loss like that. That your entire life is different. It's like a completely different book. So, the release of the old life. And in that valley, in that deep and what seems so dark and never ending, that free fall, aimless abyss land of wandering, the aimless wandering of all those mixture of crazy emotions and deep and sad and depression, anxiety, fear, all of those things, the chaos, the overwhelm, all of those emotions all mixed in down in that valley, down in that deep and dark valley where you're aimlessly wandering and not really sure which way to go, not really sure which way you're growing or how you're going to get through this, and the wondering if you're going to, and just wishing that the pain and the sorrow and the deep devastation and sadness will just ease up for a little bit. Yeah, here's where you get to release. Down in this valley, to release all of it, to release the anger, to release the fear, to release the sadness, whatever emotion that you're in, to just really be with it. And I found through my experience that the way to release it was to be able to really acknowledge it and feel it and stop fighting it, not fight it. If I fought the emotion, if I didn't allow it space, if I didn't allow it to surface or come up, then it didn't free me. It didn't give me the relief. In the release came the relief. After I allowed myself to fully go into that deep, deep sadness and sob, and really let my voice be heard out in the wild and just scream in my car where it was safe, to really do that guttural scream and holler and the why has this happened? All of the questions and the why has this happened? Why him? Why me? And what ifs? When I released and allowed that part of my voice to come out and to express and to feel and to move through me, that's when the release, that's when the rest came. That's when I felt so much relief, even if it wasn't for very long, but it gave me enough relief to continue on, to be able to continue to look for the joy, to look for the love, to look for the gifts, and to continue to feel and be grateful in the moments, even though I was in this aimless, wandering experience and devastation and sadness. That it was releasing those emotions and allowing them to flow. And of course, doing it in a safe environment, in a safe place, in a place that I felt I had the space and the alone time to do that for myself, where I didn't feel like I had to hold it back any longer for anyone else, where I had the time to, and took the time to really give myself that space to grieve, to be able to be with all those emotions and to be real with them and authentic in myself, and not just try to shove them away or busy myself with all the distractions I could allow myself with. I just allowed myself to be in that. And I'm not saying get stuck in it, but when I allowed myself to really fully express the emotion and express it, then I felt the release and the relief. More and more I could give myself the release of the emotion, the more and more relief I would receive during that time. And of course it was cyclical. It would be up and down, and all kinds of different emotions would come up and different triggers, and each moment was different. And even in that, it still gave me the energy to be able, the release and the rest enough and relief enough to have gone through the sorrow, to have gone through and allowed myself the tears or the anger or the anguish to have an expression and to move, that allowed me to continue on through the next moment and the next wave that would come rolling in, or the next cycle that would come through. So release the emotions. Go ahead and give yourself that permission and recognize the need to release it. The fourth item is to go through and express the anger. And I have an experience I'd like to share with you in this, and I feel that anger gets such a bad rap, and I feel like our anger has such it can be utilized in such amazing ways if we tap into it in a way that is safe and healthy, and it can be such a huge release to be able to let go of that anger and to give that piece of yourself the permission to feel mad and to feel that rage and to feel that anger for why did this happen, and how could this person have passed, and how could I have lost X, Y, or Z, fill in the blank, whatever your loss and your grief is about. That it's okay to feel mad about it and to feel anger and to feel like it's unfair, and all of those emotions that are deemed negative, to be able to look at those and say, okay, I'm feeling these, and not just to stuff them. And what I did was to take my recycled glass bottles. I had heard a friend tell me about going to the Goodwill and purchasing a bunch of ceramic or dishes, and just taking them and smashing them against a wall, or smashing them against like a brick wall or someplace where it was easily cleaned up. And so for me, I took what I was already collecting, because I'm a big recycler and I love the planet. And so I had a bunch of glass. And so I took all of this glass to the recycle bin, the big ones that you can just go and toss into the big receptacles for collection. And I took my glass, my big bin of glass, and I would take it down, and I would just let myself get mad, and I would let myself get angry, and I would just take it all into that glass jar, glass bottle, and I would throw it and chuck it right into that the container. It's just as hard as I could, and feel and hear that every time it would come down, and the shattering of the glass. And it was so satisfying to just break something and I wasn't hurting anyone else. I wasn't harming anyone else with the anger that needed to come out and express, but it really felt good to physically move it through my body in a way through just breaking something, because I felt like so much had been broken in my life that I wanted to go and break something else. So I felt like that was a really cathartic way to do it, was to just take that glass and beat it into the recycle bin and shatter it. And that was very cathartic for me. And I already had expressed to you another way to do that, and that's the safety of your vehicle, finding a place where you can be alone in the safety of your car. You can crank up the music, and then you can just let yourself rage and scream and yell. Or if you find a place, if you're lucky enough to have a space where you can just be out in the desert or out in some wilderness area where no one is around you to hear you, to be able to go out into the night and just to scream at the moon, scream at the sky. I was blessed to be able to have a few of those moments as well, to be able to just go out and be in nature in the middle of where no one would hear me, and to just be able to speak whatever needed to come out, and just to yell, even to speak to my late husband, whether he was there or not, whatever I needed to be angry at him for dying and angry at him for leaving and not sticking around or not healing, whatever needed to come out, I just expressed it and moved it and said whatever needed to come, and cussing and swearing and just being angry and stomping my feet, and to the point where I just let it so express, to the point where I would just end up stomping my feet or banging my fists on the ground in the sand, and then ending up in a heap of tears and just cathartic release through the flow of the tears. And I really believe that the tears are such a huge connection to our entire body and our body of water and flow. And we know with water that water contains such an amazing memory and such emotion. Water is such a beautiful symbol and such an amazing it holds so much memory. And so for me, having those tears just being able to flow, that release, that it's filling up so fully that it just has to come out and express through the eyes and through tears, because there's sometimes it just can't be contained. It's just coming out so big that it has to come out through tears. And so releasing the tears, releasing the anger, allowing it just to fully flow. So I recommend that you allow yourself to do that. Find some time, find some way, whatever way works for you. If it's a kickboxing class, do that. If it's a major dance, I would do it through dance as well. I would dance really hard or dance to a really intense song, or a song that would really speak to me. So find some music, turn that on, move your body through dance. If you have a punching bag, that's amazing, and invest in that, because that can be so incredible to just go beat on the punching bag. If you don't have a punching bag, use a pillow. If you need to, get a bat, hit your mattress. Those are all really great ways to really just let yourself actually move it. And it can be really odd and awkward at first, especially if you're like, okay, I'm going to give myself this time to be angry, and you're sitting there and you're like, okay, come on, anger, where you at? Because it's really common to push down anger, deny anger, to say, I'm not really angry. I don't really have any rage. I'm not really angry. I've just skipped that phase. And in fact, I was a pretty big one on that I didn't really want to acknowledge my own anger. I didn't feel like I had a ton of anger happening, because I had so much focus on being positive and joyful, and focusing on my gratitude, and doing all that I could to keep me from that massive devastation, to really keep providing an amazing experience in life for my son and myself. And I had a lot of joy with him, and just seeing his beautiful face, and being so grateful that I'm still alive and I get to raise him and be his mama. So I had a lot of joy mixed in with a lot of this other emotional valley of aimless wandering. So it was very intense, and there was a part of me of this not allowing to be really that angry. Like, okay, yeah, I get this happened, and almost just very factual that, okay, my husband died, this happened, these things have all happened to me, and it's very much about the facts, not so much a whole lot of emotion placed into it, almost like I could compartmentalize it, like, okay, I'm not really angry, even though I had every right to be angry, but there was some part of me that didn't feel like I had the right to be angry, or that wasn't a good thing to do, to be angry. And really and truly, I still allowed myself those experiences. So sometimes I would, okay, I've got my recycled glass, and now I'm ready to get into my anger, and I'm tapping into this anger. And then it was kind of, okay, kind of silly at first, and just kind of going through the motions, picking it up and then throwing it. But the more I got into it, and the more I started just speaking whatever needed to come out with each bottle I picked up and threw into the bin, just, and this isn't fair, and I'm mad that you're not here, and I'm mad that I have to take care of everything by myself, and just let every reason why this situation sucked come out, when I could just give that a voice and say, yeah, this is not cool. This sucks. This is shitty. And this fucking sucks. And when I could just get deep into that, once I just started small, just like, okay, it sucks that you died, and it sucks that this happened. When I could just go through all of the list and just keep rattling it off, once I got it started, then I could really just get into it and allow it to have a voice and start feeling like it was safe to express and safe to come out. So if you find yourself having a hard time tapping into the anger or the expression, especially if you're giving yourself that time and space, and now you're here in a moment where you're like, well, at this moment I'm not really feeling sad, or I'm not really feeling angry, and I'm ready to do this emotional work, but it's not happening in this moment. And you've set yourself up to be able to have that time. If you have the punching bag, it's just start punching, just start talking and letting it out and expressing what gets to be said and what hasn't been said yet that you haven't allowed the voice. And I think you'll find, if you do that you'll find the relief in that as well. You'll find the relief in the release. And then you can get to the rest of your healing, the rest in your body, the rest from the relief in that moment. No matter how temporary, or no matter how much time you experience that relief before the next wave comes up, or the next big tumultuous feeling arises and wants to have space to express. And the fifth thing I want to talk to you about is the release of your identity. And this is a big one because, like I said earlier, it really does feel like a different book, and a major plot change in the book. So this huge next chapter, or a different book within a trilogy, or within however many books you have within your life experience. And that release of, who am I now? Who is this person now that I am no longer in this life? The old life. Now that I've let go of this old life, now I get to restructure who I am. What am I to do? What's my daily life look like? It's this wandering. You're still being in that aimless wandering space in that valley, and building and figuring out who you are now. Who you are now, with going through and healing through your grief, moving through your grief, and who you are moving forward. And the release of your identity. And of course, there are pieces that will always remain, that'll always still be you, to the core of who you are. And it's a very interesting experience to go through a death experience, and to go through a shifting of your entire belief system, your belief structure, your foundation of who you are and how you're related in the world. If you were widowed, then looking at your new identity of being a widow, and the boxes that you check on forms that you fill out. That's an identity shift right there. When you're filling out a simple form and you write your name down. You're writing your name down and you normally check that box that you're married. And when you no longer get to check that box that you're married and you have to check a different box, what box do you check? Are you checking the widowed? Wow, that's a huge slap in the face and a big wake-up call. Okay, now I'm checking that box. And that's now my identity that I have to write down onto a paper. And that's how I'm going to be seen and identified. I don't want to be in that box. That's not a fun box to be in. I don't think anybody wants to be in that box. And so going through figuring out how do I check this box? And not feeling like I can fill that form out, because in my heart I'm still married. And so how do I fill this box out? I mean, yeah, I get that I'm widowed. And this is who I am now. This is my new identity. So it's this really interesting time of figuring out, who am I now? How have I shifted? What's my new life experience? How do I identify myself? How do other people identify me? I used to be seen in a group, being able to be invited to X, Y, or Z as a couple. And now I'm this mom, this widowed mom. Yeah, I'm this mom still, but I'm this widowed mom. I'm no longer invited as the couple because I'm not coupled anymore. So it's a huge identity shift and an awakening to who am I rebuilding, and looking at how am I going to move forward from that. Like, where am I at right now? Just acknowledging where I am right now, and the shock of it, the denial, the anger, the true sadness through that, the bargaining, all of it that comes with it. And the loss of the dreams and the visions that you have for your future and how you're going to be together and what goals you have together, all of that stuff that gets just completely tossed and lost, the release of all of that. So building your new life and your new identity, and who do I get to be now? And what I recommend is that to just be with it, express what you need to express in that valley, in that aimless wandering, and allow yourself the gift of being okay with not knowing who you are in that moment or where you're going, and just know that that's a really normal feeling, and to feel really lost in who you are, that's normal and that's okay too. You're not crazy, and it's a really normal part of the process of losing someone and grieving. And it's okay to feel lost. It's okay to not know your purpose. It's okay not to know what you're going to do next. What's next? What next? That was a big question I had on my heart so often in that deep, dark valley, and that aimless wandering is, now what? Now what am I supposed to do? My plan is shot. Like, it's done. Like, I can't go back to the old plan. There's such big chunks and pieces missing from that plan that I can't just do it the way I was doing it anymore. I have to do my life differently. It looks different now. It is different now. And coming to that realization and getting over that shock and realizing, wow, how do I get to build this new experience? And I've talked a lot in some other episodes and in how to go through and how to harness your gratitude, harness your tools to be able to look for the gifts, look for the positive, and to continue to build and step forward and move forward in your life and building your new identity and allowing yourself to love yourself more and to release and to go through the processes of your healing, whatever steps you need. And only you will know what steps you're in, where you're at in the process, and what's best to serve you in your grief process. No one else can tell you how you best need to grieve. and how your process is going to look and what your life is going to look like or what the best path is going to be for you. Now, there are wonderful things that you can tap into with support groups and support people and having people assist you and tapping into people who've gone through a similar experience and people that you look up to and that you can relate to so that you don't feel so isolated and alone in that valley. That's absolutely important so that you feel that you're not alone and that you can do it, because it can feel very isolating and very alone in that valley. So that's when you can reach up and you can grab onto anyone, whether it's in your church or whether it's through counseling or whether it's through a grief group or a friend who has been through a similar experience, or whether it's taking care of yourself more, getting a mentor, getting a coach. Whatever it is you feel will help you feel better, that will give you the assistance to step you one step closer or make you feel just a little bit more seen, more heard, more loved, and more understood, and give you more compassion and empathy. And then lean into that. Lean into the support, because that's really pivotal and really important when you are rebuilding your identity, when you're rebuilding your life, your new life, and getting that clearer focus when everything feels so unclear. To find something to grab onto, to find some kind of a flashlight or something that's going to sprinkle some life, some light on your journey and give you some sort of a stepping stone to throw down on your path that only you know where that path is going to go and where you get to decide to place that stone. But reach for the people who can give you a solid stone, a little bit of solid footing for a moment. And I just recommend that you find that support in people that give you the stone with the gift of saying, here's a stone. Where can I assist you in putting it? And allowing you to decide where and when that stone gets to be placed and how you want to step forward and move forward. I'm not saying that's easy. I'm not saying that you're always going to know exactly the perfect place to put that stone and the direction to go. The important thing is that you reach for that stone and you place it down in your path so that you can at least give it a try and see how that feels. And if it doesn't feel good, if it's not bringing you any relief or any more pleasure than before you set that stone down, then pick that stone up and put it somewhere else. The important thing is to just keep moving through your body, moving through the emotion, moving through the experience, and moving through all of the beliefs that are not serving you, moving through all of the ways that you're not allowing yourself to have the time to go through the grief or have the time to rest and rejuvenate and heal, because grief is absolutely a physical process as well as an emotional process. It really does take that physical toll. So that's where releasing all of these things and then resting and allowing that release and the rest to do their work. So when you release the emotions, when you release the fears, when you release all of these items we've talked about, from releasing the body, releasing the old life, releasing the emotional overflow and all of the turbulation and the turbulent emotions that come up, when you release the anger and then you release the identity and you're rebuilding, and then you find the relief parts, those can be great places to just allow the rest. When you find that relief, really allow yourself to soak that relief in, to maintain some momentum toward going to the next thing that you're getting to release, and then the next thing. And those can be stones and of themselves along your path. And yeah, so see where you can place, what kind of stones can you put along your path to assist you in climbing that big mountain towards your healing. And the sixth item that I want to talk to, bringing it back to the physical, is releasing the physical items. Now this one was really big, and this one really talks a lot about the physical items left behind after a death of your loved one. And it also can be something that is the physical, releasing the physical. Say if it was you lost a job and then you have to physically up and move to another location to go to another job, or you're physically having to get up and leave a situation that is not healthy. Just releasing the physical items, releasing the old life and the physical actual zip code or the location that you were in into an entirely new environment. So talking all things about releasing of the physical, and mainly what I want to talk about, since it was such a huge thing for me, is the physical items themselves. The physical items themselves were really, really challenging for me. And in fact, I still have items today that I have not actually gone through and released because I had ideas of what I might want to do with the items. For instance, I had taken my late husband's clothing, and a lot of it I did release onto the Goodwill or whoever wanted to have some of his clothing, but some of it I kept, especially special t-shirts or things that were really important or sentimental, that we had worn on certain days, whether it was a really special date or a special shirt that was really important to us. And I kept those items, and I figured that I might someday have a quilt made and take those items and make from the t-shirts or the jeans to make the t-shirts from the front, and perhaps the jeans be the back of this quilt or a blanket that might be created. So I still have items like that were sentimental, that meant something to me, and that I felt like maybe one day I might want to create that for my son or for myself. And then the physical items themselves, I wasn't ready to release anything that my late husband had. Nothing. I wasn't ready to move any of his stuff out or to get rid of anything that he had. I just wasn't ready to let anything go. In fact, I had his nightstand and I had it all just the same that it was before. And the first time I remember that I was ready to move anything or shift anything from while he was still alive was that I finally, I think it was after the 6-month mark, I was ready to claim more space in the closet. And I had already kind of shoved everything of his to the side and had more space for my clothes on one side. But it was the shoes. I needed more room for my shoes. And so I was ready to take his shoes out of the closet, box them up, and then I couldn't even get rid of them. All I could do was move them into the garage. But just taking his shoes and boxing them up was such a difficult task. It was excruciatingly painful just to get the box and put it in front of the closet and to physically pick up his shoes and move them from where they were. It was almost like if I just kept his things, it's like this weird warped way of feeling like that they're going to come back, or that they're still around, and that their stuff still holds their energy, and that it was some piece of him surrounding me still. So moving his shoes was this one more piece of accepting that he's gone and that he's no longer with me. Even though I know he's gone, he's no longer in my bed, he's no longer there to greet me in the morning. I watched him take his last breath, but moving his shoes, the way he stepped forward in his life, the way he walked in his life, and the shoes that held his feet, that was a challenge. Big, big challenge. So the next thing that I did was I just had moved his nightstand into a little bit of a different location and taken a few things off of the nightstand and tucked them into the top drawer so that I could have a little more space for my own things. But really, the rest of it remained. And I wasn't ready to go through it and release it and go through item by item. And I was just not ready to do that until I had found my now husband, and I was in the process of moving to be with him and to begin my new life with him. And that wasn't for at least a year and 11 months after my late husband's passing. So I didn't push myself. I didn't make myself feel like I had to. I just knew I wasn't ready. And then even when I got with my now husband, and he completely understands and he understood the situation, and he had a very different experience with his late wife. In fact, we moved my entire house. I pretty much boxed all of it up for the most part. And I went through some things, but really when we were moving, we just pretty much boxed it all up, put it in a U-Haul, and then moved it. And his house just had to take a deep breath, and we had to figure out how to put it all in. And of course, afterwards, we had a nice, a fun time going through items and physical items from both of our households, and then got to have a big giveaway and a yard sale and lots of donating. So we did a lot of that together. But my now husband, Matthew, he actually had a different experience. He went through a lot of the stuff from his late wife and his late son. He ended up getting a huge, like a dumpster. And he said he just went through so much of the house and just gathered things up. He gave stuff to people that he felt like her clothing and items that were very personal and things that he felt that someone might utilize. He did end up giving a lot of stuff away to people, but then there were just items that he just said, I just ended up getting a big bin that they would then come and pick up, just like a garbage bin like they do with construction. He just ended up tossing a bunch of stuff because his late wife had all kinds of books and different things that she was studying, and all kinds of different, just lots of different items from their years of being married and their life together. And he just ended up just tossing, and he was ready a lot sooner than I was. And so everyone is in their own process, and when they're ready. I know of a fellow widow gal. She was in my grief group that I met, and she couldn't be around the items. It was too difficult for her to come home every day to the items. And she ended up asking her family to come in and just help her just basically gut the entire home of everything and anything that was theirs. She had to release everything. For her, that was the process that worked. She got rid of everything. She just had to get all of it out. She couldn't be looking at it. It was too painful to look at. So she just released it all. She got rid of everything. Now, I don't recall if it was that, she probably held on to photo albums and things that were really sentimental, but for the most part, everything that she no longer, just items that were too painful, she just had to go rearrange, repaint, new furnishings, just whatever she needed to do. She had to gut the entire place and create a new experience, because she was in such a new element in her life and a new chapter. It seems very fitting that it would be to just redesign the entire thing and give her the most optimal opportunity to recognize where she was at in a really visceral, physical way. And so wherever you're at on your journey, allow yourself that process and know that it's okay wherever you're at. However you are on that process of releasing of physical items from your old life, that it's okay. If you need to hold on to it, it's okay. Allow yourself that time. Allow yourself that time to be with it and to be able to process it in your own time, in your own way, and how you feel best serves you. And with the items, the Marie Kondo situation of, does this item bring me joy? I feel is a very beautiful question, because it really is true. Does this item bring me joy? Am I ever going to use this item? Am I loving this item? Does it bring me good memories? Now, if I look at this item and it brings my energy down, because I've gone through several layers of decluttering, minimizing, and getting rid of things in my life that no longer serve. And this has been something that has been part of my experience and challenge, is to manage stuff. Being a mom of 3 beautiful children and just having gone through and being sentimental anyway, and coming from a home where my my mom has definitely held on to more items and had more clutter surrounding her, coming from the Depression era, and her parents coming from the Depression. They definitely held on to a lot of items that are very interesting and that make you wonder why. So for me, looking at the item and saying, does this bring me joy? Do I love this? Does this bring my vibration up? Does it bring my vibration down? Does this item serve my life right now? Does this item, when I hold it, when I touch it, do I feel like I'm sinking down, or does it lift me up a little bit? And I've done that a lot with items that I wasn't really sure if I was ready to let it go, or if I wasn't sure if I really loved the item. It's, how does it feel when I look at it? Does it bring me happiness? Does it bring me pleasure? Does it bring me joy? If I look at that item and I just instantly feel sad and it makes me feel miserable, then it's probably time to let it go and get out of my space. I mean, look at it, recognize it, allow it to be the service vehicle for what it is, to trigger the emotion and move it. And then maybe look at it and ask yourself if you're ready to let go of that. Have you processed it enough, or do you need it to be constantly a downer for you to look at? Because there's already so much when you're going through grief to look at in your life that is can be depressing. So any items you can let go of that have a negative energy or a negative memory, or something that triggers a not fun memory for you, it's okay to just let it go. So wherever you are at on the physical process of letting go, absolutely honor that. If it's just calling up and saying, come get it out of here, or selling it, donating it, passing it on, or if it serves you to keep it because it brings you joy and it brings you pleasure and it has amazing memories attached to it, then absolutely do that. And I do want to share with you one more little tip that comes up with this. And this, I don't recall where I heard it from, but it's the idea that of that time capsule. Am I walking through a time capsule of history of my life? Or am I having my environment and my experience reflect back to me my present now, where I'm at? And that was a big one for me, because I, being a photographer, had huge, I'm talking big family portraits of my family. I had a 60 by 40 big image of me and my son and my late husband in our kitchen, and it was ginormous. So I had that, and I had several other. I had them all over my home. I had it in my in-home studio in my basement. I had big photos all over my wall, not only of my family, but of clients. And for the most part, I had my family, because when people walked through into my studio and had their experience of their photo session with me, they got to see how beautiful these giant, gorgeous canvases would be on the wall. And of course, that was my way of advertising how they could decorate in their home. And so I had so many larger than life pictures of my beautiful, larger than life, amazing, loving relationships I had in my life, and my son and my husband, and beautiful portraits. And I had 3 really big ones right at my front entry. I think they were 24 by 30s. Anyway, they were really big, and I had 3 of those. I had so many. I had probably well over 11 images in my home that were large. I had them in my bedroom. I had them in my son's bedroom. I had them all over. And years later, after my husband and I have been together, and we've gone through several unlayerings and more releasing sessions as time has gone on, and saying, okay, it's time to release again. And it's amazing how stuff accumulates back into your life, and when you release and minimize and downsize, or go through things and say, okay, I'm done with this. We've had a lot more come into our lives. So we've done that over the years and gone through more and more stuff, both of us, because even though my husband went through and got rid of a lot of things from his late son and his late wife, there was still stuff that he kept and that remained. And so there was still a lot of boxes and things that he hadn't gone through or hadn't finished and hadn't actually gotten to. So when we had moved into the house that we're in now, we got to do that whole process again. And we came to a period in our life, because we both had big pictures. My husband had big, large pictures of his family and his son, his wife, their dog, and these big, beautiful portraits. And they were created and donated by this wonderful photographer that they had, this family photographer, and they had these big, big, beautiful portraits and all kinds of pictures that they had for the memorial. And they were big, large, beautiful framed pictures. And we both looked at these and we said, we need an entire gallery for all of these pictures that we have, and what are we going to do? And we teased that when we got our property that we were going to create one of those really large pull-out rug displays like they have at Home Depot, where they are able to like open like a big book when you take and you look at the rugs, and you're going from one rug to the next rug, and those hanging rugs that they have for those displays. And we teased that we needed one of those for all these big pictures that we had, so that we could actually display them instead of have them just in boxes in our garage or in our storage in our home. And so finally we got to the point where we said, what are we going to do with these? What are we going to do? Because we didn't have the wall space, first of all, for these huge pictures. And I had the images actually in digital format, so it's not like I was going to lose the pictures. I always have them to be able to look at and to create in a different size, in a different way, into a book or whatever I want to create that's different. So I had access to the images, but we had these huge pictures and they're beautiful. And what do we do with them? We're not going to hang them because it brings sadness of what we've lost. And we have our new amazing life together and our family, and we want to honor and reflect and have that beauty reflected back to us, and to celebrate our children and our family together. And so we have a few pictures of them in our home that we still have, and we honor them and we love them. But these big, larger than life pictures, if we put them all over our walls, would be just hanging on and reminding us of the loss that we live with every day, and it wouldn't be reflecting our present moment. So we just sat with that. What are we going to do with these pictures? And finally we got to it that when we were in a session of releasing, we just said, you know what? Okay, what can we do? And my husband was ready just to throw it in the garbage. And I was like, I cannot just throw this in the garbage and just imagine it being in a field or in the landfill and just decaying and rotting. That broke my heart. So I said, you know what? Rather than just throw it in the garbage, I'm like, let's burn it, and let's have that transformation through fire to be able to release these. So we ended up having this big fire in our backyard, and we just had these huge pictures that we went out and we just laid them down. And it was really, really hard to do, because it was, of course, my artwork and my beautiful family and his beautiful family. But we were ready to release that old, to be able to move more powerfully into our new, because we have our sons. My son that had lost his dad, and his biological son that's now my son too. And of course my son is his. We claim all three of our children, and our daughter that we had, our biological daughter that we had together. So we wanted to be able to, with photos of our family, have those photos. And like I said, we have the images, we have them digital, we have them in books and different things, but having these ginormous 30 by 40, 24 by 36, these big 30 by 40 pictures, having those abundantly displayed didn't leave space for our growth and where we were going, and the children as they were growing, and through all of their ages and stages, and being able to display all the beautiful moments that we were creating and the new memories that we were building. So we decided that through that fire, it was a really beautiful way to release those physical items. So that's what we did, and I hope that assists you. I hope that our time today has been powerful, and that you have taken away some nuggets, given yourself some permission to allow yourself to release and to rejuvenate and to rest, and to allow yourself to release all of these things that no longer serve you, whether it's emotional or physical, to be able to fully step one step at a time in your healing, in your process, and springing forward in your life in a really beautiful and a way that really works for you and that serves you to your highest and best good. So thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in today. And I appreciate you for being here. And thanks for giving yourself this time. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. And I look forward to the next time on our next episode. You can find me at Light Springkles on YouTube and podcast, and you can find me at lightsprinkles.com. That's lightsprinkles.com. Again, lightsprinkles.com. I'm Spring Ulrich, your host, and thank you for tuning in. Much love and light to you on your journey and your path. Sprinkling love and light. Bye for now.